Hello, welcome to my channel, My Purple Notebook. This is Lillian Haven. I'm a safeguarding children professional and have over 20 years experience in this field. Today we're going to be looking at a child protection case. But first of all, we need to look at the legislation that underpins safeguarding practices within England. And the first legislation and most important one is the Children Act of 1989. This Act legislates how safeguarding children practices should be conducted. It was revised in 2004 and further revised in 2017. The child protection system in England is grounded in the Children Act of 1989. The government's working together to safeguard children document provide guidance on the duties of key agencies to safeguard children. It was amended in 2023 and establishes three essential core principles. Firstly, that the concept of parental responsibility. Secondly, that the child's welfare is the main consideration and courts are considering a question about a child's upbringing and safety within their home. And thirdly, that children are best looked after by their family unless interventions are essential. There are several sections of the Children Act that places a duty on local authority to promote the safeguarding and welfare of children in need that live in their particular area. Section 17 places a duty on social care to provide a range of services for children that are in need that live within their area. Section 47 inquiries state what agencies must do when they have cause to suspect that a child living in their area has suffered harm or is likely to suffer significant harm. Section 31 is a care order which is granted by the courts. The courts would then grant a Section 22 whereby local authority can remove that child from the family, from the home, and place them in a place of safety. That child then becomes a looked after child and they are removed to safeguard and promote their health and well-being. And then Section 11 of the Children Act places a duty on key agencies, and those key agencies are social care, health and the police. During their day-to-day function, they must always ensure that while carrying out their duties, they always consider the needs of the child. Sadly, children continue to suffer harm and are murdered, as found in previous cases, such as with Maria Caldwell. She was sadly murdered. Also Victoria Clumbier, and then baby P. After such cases, there's usually a statement release, and they say the same thing over and over and over, which is that this should never have happened, it will never happen again, and that there are lessons to be learnt. Let's see what statement is released following the court hearing of this case that we're going to be looking at. The case we're looking at is about a young girl whose name was Sara Sharif. She was 10 years old. She was murdered in her home in Working, Surrey. She lived there with her father and stepmother. She was murdered by her father, Order Sharif, age 43, and her stepmother, Banash Batul, age 30. Also charged with her murder was her uncle Faisal Malik, aged 29. The father had made a harrowing phone call to the police stating that he had killed his daughter, that he had beaten her too hard, but he had chastised her within the legal limits. However, when he made that call, the family had already fled to Pakistan and were hiding out there. Sarah would have already been dead for at least 2 days. Irfan Sharif was already known for his violent attacks on several women, including holding one at knife point. He had married Sarah's mother, Olga Domain, from Poland. It's reported that she may have learning difficulties. They were both known to the police for over a decade, going back as far as 2010. There were several reports to child protection regarding poor parenting, domestic violence, poor housing, homelessness. They lived in one bedroom and shared one bed. The flat was sparse, there was no light bulbs and no bedding. The children had no age-appropriate toys. The 3-year-old sibling was found wandering in a shop. On another occasion was found wandering in Woking town centre. So Sarah was put on a pre-birth plan before she was born. They had signed an agreement that there will be no physical chastisement of the children. They were to attend a 10-week parenting course, and they were to ensure the doors were always kept locked. And this agreement was done under a 12-month supervision order. The children were physically harmed during these altercations. One had suffered a burn and scolding. In November 2014, an emergency protection order was finally taken out and the children were removed and placed in foster care. On one occasion, the children had disclosed at school that they didn't want to go home. They had made the allegation that the mum had beaten them hard, that the man had hit them, and they were physically shaking and distressed. So while they were in care, one of the foster's carer had reported that Sarah would often go and stand in front of a wall. For no reason, she'd just stand there and look at the wall. Other foster carers reported that the children didn't respond to physical contact and would remain stiff, particularly if they were being carried or their hand were held. They would just stiffen up. In 2019, parenting concerns were raised again when scars were seen on the children. The family court granted supervision visits after the father, Sharif, claimed that the mother had slapped the children, and in particular Sarah. She had been slapped, and he alleged that she'd been burnt and that the mother had tried to drown her. Despite the judge being fully aware of Sharif's extremely violent history, he then granted full custody of Sarah to him and his wife, Batoon. The judge praised Batoon to be the children's saving grace and praised her for her interventions within the family. However, for the next 2 years, the neighbours made repeated calls to social care, stating that they had heard howling and screams. On one occasion, a school friend saw Sarah covered with bruises. Sarah said that she had fallen off her bike. However, Sarah's friend did not believe her and reported this incident to the children, to the teachers. By then, Sarah had started to wear a hijab, so the teacher decided to speak to the father about it, just to make inquiries as to why she was now wearing a hijab. He took this opportunity to claim that Sarah was being teased since wearing the hijab and bullied. He told the school that he was going to take her out of school and home tutor her. The school raised no objections to this, and sadly, as we now know, she died 4 months later. We can also see that there were multiple opportunities whereby Sarah could have been securely safeguarded. These opportunities were missed. On medical examination after Sarah's body was found, it revealed that there were 71 injuries and 21 fractures. There were fractures to her collarbone, shoulder blade, ribs, humerus. There were 11 spine fractures. There were fractures to both hands. The medical practitioner reported that they had not seen such horrific fractures, even on children that had been involved in a motor accident. These fractures were dated back to between 2 and 8 weeks. Sarah also had a brain injury and had suffered a blow to her head days before her death. There were 2 open burn wounds on her buttocks, the shape of the sole plate of an iron. There were burns on her ankle, and it's not sure whether her ankles was held to a hot pipe or hot water was poured upon it. Again, no treatment was administered to any of her burn areas. She had 6 human bite marks on her left arm. Her father refused to give a tooth impression. Impressions were taken from Batoon and the uncle, and they didn't fit the marks on her arm. She was tied with masking tape and skipping rope and hooded. The tape left a hole for her to breathe. She was also beaten with a pole and cricket bat and a mobile phone. Sarah was kept in a soiled nappy. There was semi-feces contained in the nappy and urine. The rest of it was out on the mattress. She was malnourished and underweight. These cumulative injuries caused her death, not just the injury to the brain. She would have suffered unbelievable torture leading up to the last few weeks of her life. A statement by Simon Bailey, Nation Police Chief Counsel, stated that there are 100 children on a child protection plan and that they are being appropriately managed and kept safe, and that Sarah's case was tragic. He also talked about the staff experiencing difficulty under the job, under such intense pressure from the job, as the threshold differed around the country. Bridget Phillipson, Education Secretary, talked about working more jointly with police and social care. And this was in relation to education. Education was to play a bigger role in safeguarding children. And there is a document that's going to be released shortly, the Wellbeing Children Bill Act. It's called the Wellbeing and School Bill of 2025. It talks about education to play a bigger part in safeguarding children. The bill makes provision about safeguarding the welfare of children, about supporting the children when they're leaving care, regulations of workers, to establish agencies under Part 2 of the Care Standards Act. It looks at employment of children, breakfast clubs, uniforms, attendance at after-school activities, regulations of independent educational institutions, inspections of schools and colleges. Talks about teachers' misconduct, academies, teachers' academies, and repealing of the 128 of the Education 2002 Act, which places a duty on schools and admission to establish new schools for connected purposes. Also talks about a register for missing children that are missing from education. It will also examine the application of homeschooling. Local authority will have the power to intervene and examine the home environment. Where a children is found to be on a Child Protection Act plan, they will not be homeschooled. They wouldn't be able to be supervised appropriately. Each child that has a concern will be given a unique child identifying number. This is presently being piloted. That will actually be useful, because then if a child has a unique child protection identifying number, people will know that this child has child protection concerns should they present at somewhere like accident emergency or the dentist or optician. They will know and look out for any signs of further harm. They also talk about early support for families and support for parents of young children. All agencies should have access to this unique identifying number. If they don't, then children will slip through the net. So they need to make sure databases are interfaced. What is of concern is agencies will do all their checks and monitor children that are on the plan that still remain at home with their families. But at 5 o'clock, everybody goes home. Documents are documented. I's are dotted, T's are crossed. Phone calls are made to professionals. Meetings have been arranged. Action plans are carried out. But in the meantime, those children are left at the mercy of their abusers in their homes. Homeschooling highlights the hidden dangers of unsupervised homeschooling. Agencies have to make sure they speak to children Despite children making disclosure, their voices are often not heard, or they are heard, they're removed, interventions happen, and then they're returned back to the abusers, as in the case with Sarah and other cases. Unfortunately, last year, 150 children died following abuse. 330 were seriously harmed. A third of those were under the age of 1. And sadly, 1 child a week dies by the very people that should be caring and protecting them. The government reforms of February 2023, the government published an implementation strategy and consultation on reforming children and social care in England. They plan to invest 200 million over the next 2 years, addressing urgent issues that children are facing within their families. Among other things, 45 million is being used for Family First for Children Pathfinders, a programme in up to 12 local areas in England. Children charities such as the NSPCC and Bernardo said this money falls short of what is actually needed. We currently have 100,000 children in England that are being homeschooled. And more alarmingly is that 300,000 of children are missing from education, which the King mentioned in his speech, in the King's speech. Her friend Sharif was finally convicted on the 11th of December for the murder of his daughter, Sara Sharif, and he faces a life sentence of 40 years imprisonment, which will make him 81 years when he's released. The stepmother received a sentence of 33 years, which would make her 63 years when she is released. The brother-in-law was found guilty of allowing her death. Speakers of the House spoke about further reforms of children's social care and stronger safeguards for children in education, and reiterated the government's commitment to keeping children safe from further announcements. Keeping children safe. Further announcements are imminent. So again, you can see what the outcome was here. They're talking again about tightening up legislation to safeguard children. But as we talk, right now, we know that children are being harmed. We've just looked at the statistics that 330 children are seriously harmed and 1 child dies a week. So what can we do to safeguard children? We have to be the voice for the children, for the unborn. We have to speak up. And where we think interventions are not tough enough, we need to challenge. We need to challenge, put it in writing and document it, and make sure that health professionals are carrying out their duty as stipulated in the Child Protection Plan, and that professionals are working in accordance with the Children Act of 1989. Let's all see what we can do to safeguard children. 1 child dying each week is far too much. And we really have to not just depend on legislation, but actively seek to safeguard children. Thank you for listening. Please let me know if there's any comments. And we'll be looking at another case. Thank you for tuning in.